Happy Halloween, everybody. It is October. What a way to start. It is October 31st, 2022, Halloween. Don't really have much of a costume, so I just kind of threw whatever randomness. I got an orange shirt. It's good for Halloween. I had this construction vest, so you know what? Just throw some shades on, and I will look like some sort of a construction worker. There we go. Something for the Halloween spirit. How's everybody doing? You know the drill by now. Movie collection update. Got some VHS tapes, got some DVDs, got some Blu-rays, got a little bit of everything here. So, let's dive right into it. Now, for Halloween, I've been wanting to watch a lot of horror movies and stuff, so there's a lot of movies in here that are just like random horror movies that I found, but not all of them. So, starting off, the used place I go to a lot, they have VHS tapes in there for like 50 cents to $1, so all the time I'll just get these random VHS tapes in there. And the first one I got was for the Gary Busey collection. You guys know every update. There's a Gary Busey movie and there's a Paul Walker movie, every update. And today's Busey movie is a VHS of a movie I really had never heard of before called Act of Piracy. And man, did this thing blow. It is like, it felt like a TV movie. I don't know if it officially is or not. It's rated R. God only knows why. 80% of this movie, nothing happens. Even Busey can't really get many of his Buseyisms in there, except for a little bit of action at the very beginning and the very end. Pretty rough sit. The other VHS tape was a horror film. Figured it'd be good for Halloween. Never heard of this a day in my life. Apparently this is a German TV film that got US distribution by Fangoria, and it is called School's Out. I mainly just looked at this cover and I said, what the hell is that? And I investigated it. This is an odd little movie because it's trying to be like a Scream knockoff and a Dario Argento film at the same time, because it's filmed very stylistically. There's some really creative, cool camera angles in it, but maybe this would benefit if I watched the original German dub with subtitles, because the English dubbing on this release is not very good at all. And there's some really weird choices in the direction and in the story, but I kind of liked it. It was just an odd little thing that I've never heard of before, and it's not without its merit. It's definitely cheap. There's definitely some unintentional hilarity to it. Some of the dialogue in this is like, you're drinking wine out of a plastic cup? That's like giving a blowjob through a condom. But because the dubbing is so bad, it's a weird little movie that has enough going for it that made it worth a watch. It was weird, but kind of in a good way. It's not gonna, the kills or whatever, it's not gonna top any slasher list. And when you find out the killer at the end and you find out the motivation, it is so over the top, just like they put way too much effort into killing all these people when there was such a simple solution to the whole problem. And I've got 3 Blu-rays, all of films that I saw in the theater over the summer. And the first one, I pre-ordered the Steelbook, got this in 2 days ago, of Top Gun Maverick. I wanted to get the Steelbook because I know people always go after these Steelbooks, and I figured for this movie, this is probably going to be a very hot commodity to come by the Steelbook, so I just pre-ordered this. I saw this in the theater twice. I went in with low expectations thinking this would be nothing, and it's Top Gun Maverick. It's like the 5th highest grossing domestic film ever. Tom Cruise may be clinically insane, but he gave us a good sequel. It's not perfect. The love story with Jennifer Connelly did not need to be in there at all. But watching the special features on this about how the actors did this film and the training they had to go through, watch the bonus features on the Blu-ray, guys, because the rigor that went into preparation to make this movie is just ridiculous. But great movie. I saw it in the theater twice, so I think that, goes to show enough about it. Don't think that needs any introduction. Same with this, Bullet Train. I saw this in the theater and I had so much fun with it. I mean, how can you hate a modern day theatrical action movie where Thomas the Tank Engine plays an integral part in the plot? You know, Brad Pitt, there's some really random but funny cameos in there. It's filmed like a Japanese kind of action movie. It's like a live action anime almost in many places. So crazy, so wild, so over the top in every way. And currently, as of Halloween, this is probably my #1 film of the year. I just had that much fun with it. I left the theater just so elated and so overjoyed with how entertaining this was. So as of now, this is my #1 of the year. And then this one, from a script point of view and some of the execution, it's not a great film by any means, but seeing this in the theater was hands down one of the best theater experiences I've had this year. And it's this movie called Fall. Dear God, watching this in the theater on the big screen was some of the most nerve-wracking shit. Like, my palms were sweaty, and again, I bought this because I wanted to watch the making of documentary that's on this Blu-ray. And again, a lot of this was filmed practically, and it looked really nerve-wracking. So, you know, between something like this and Top Gun Maverick, I'm very glad to see people are putting extreme amounts of effort into making movies again. So, I know this is highly criticized for being a ripoff of 47 Meters Down, which I admittedly have never seen, so I don't know about that, but it's fine. Like, I think my rating on IMDb, I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I thought it was fine enough for what it is. I like these kind of survival movies, and seeing it on theater, man, it was something. Could it have been a lot better? Sure, but as it stands, I didn't mind this one. I actually kind of liked it. Kicks the shit out of Halloween Ends and Ambulance and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know that's a hot take, but fuck that movie. Okay, getting into the rest of them. This was like a perfect, like, macabre comedy that had just the right levels of darkness and twistedness to it, but it was a lot of fun. Starring John Ritter. Who doesn't love John Ritter? Stay tuned. And I've been wanting to see this one for so long. I always knew the premise, I knew the plot, so it was nice to finally sit down and watch it. This would make a great double feature with something like Nothing But Trouble, where it's a very dark comedy and it's very twisted, but almost in a way that it revels in it. Like, you could just see the makers of this movie like, ha 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 ha. Like, it's got a very diabolical sense of humor to it, and John Ritter does great. There is a sitcom reference at one point in this movie that is one of the funniest things I've seen. And there's a music video within the film that's pretty wild. Just inventive as hell. Like, the fake commercials that pop up all throughout this thing are incredible. They're creative. That's a great word for this movie. It's very creative and definitely underrated. I definitely think you guys give it a chance. It's a lot of fun. Jeffrey Jones is in it, and I know Jeffrey Jones, but you know, this is a great time. I loved it. It was actually a birthday gift for me. Con Air. I've had it on VHS. I've always loved Con Air. This is just a matter of me finally giving in and getting a Blu-ray for the collection. What can you say about Con Air other than this movie is awesome in pretty much every stretch of the imagination? How can you not love Con Air? I mean, come on. Then this one from good old Severin Films, thanks to my buddy Jake. I got this from him at a Flashback Weekend. I'd always heard about this film. The plot was intriguing, and this is a 3-disc special edition. And let me tell you, if you like this movie, then the amount of features this thing has, you'll be in heaven, because there's more features on this than the Top Gun Maverick Blu-ray. And there's a soundtrack CD and 3-disc set of the 1987 horror film called Retribution. So the release that Severin Films did is fantastic. It's loaded with features. Quality is excellent. This release got a lot of love, so kudos to Severin on that. The movie itself, I thought was really fucking dumb. I didn't particularly care for this one. It has a huge cult status. Letterboxd, IMDb, everyone seems to love this thing, and they consider this like an 80s cult classic. I'm sorry, guy. I don't mean to be the contrarian, but I thought this was really, really dumb. It's very, very stylish, and there's a lot of cool, bits to it, but at the same time, it's dumb. It's pretty bad. Like, the lead guy was not the right person for this role. Every time he goes possessed and his eyes turn green and his skin like, ha 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 ha, like, this thing was fucking dumb. The release, it's a good release. If you're a huge fan of this film, then you've got special features to last you through the whole year, but me, no. I thought that movie was just stupid. And then I am mad that I did not get to this one sooner, because this was just absolutely Friday. I was laughing my ass off pretty much the entirety of the runtime of this. There was never a dull moment. The whole film just has this chill vibe where you're just hanging out with these guys in Compton, and just, it's so wacky and so witty, but it's very smart, and this was a laugh fest. I loved everything. Chris Tucker steals every frame that he is in. You just got knocked the fuck out! This was fantastic. I don't know what took me so long to get to this one, but I'm glad I finally did. And then after I watched it, I also watched the sequel. There's 3 of them, but I watched the second one next Friday. I didn't care for that one. I didn't think it tried too hard. The humor didn't land as well. The absence of Chris Tucker was not good. I mean, it's always nice to see Debo in there, but the sequel, and I've heard the third one's even worse, so I don't know if I watched that, but this one's a comedy classic for all I'm concerned. This was excellent. And this is a childhood favorite movie of mine. I've been obsessed with this film since I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. My dad and I would always watch it when it came on cable. Real genius. So glad this got a proper, really nice 4K release. I don't have a 4K player. I'm still just getting these for the Blu-rays, but look at that. Real genius. It's got a commentary on there with the director, which is a really good commentary. She shares a lot of great insight, the director. And there's also a deleted scene where Val Kilmer flies away on a chair held up by balloons, and then they even included the raw takes of that scene. So there's some cool features on here, and just as a child, this was always one of my favorites. It's a thinking man's Revenge of the Nerds. I read that somewhere, which sums it up perfectly. Great cat, Val Kilmer. Great soundtrack. The ending with the popcorn. When I was a kid, that was some of my favorite stuff ever. I love Real Genius. Always nice seeing William Atherton in there playing his usual asshole self, like everything he's in. So yeah, I'm so glad this movie's getting some love now with a release like this. It's one of my all-time favorites. Alright, and then this was a blind buy. I had never seen either of these films. So for Halloween, I picked it up for the Halloween season. It's a double feature. This was a couple bucks at a thrift store I go to. A double feature of Cherry Falls, which I had heard of in the past, and then another John Ritter film, Terror Tract, which I have never heard of that one before. Cherry Falls was a lot of fun. I was laughing at it. It was a very playful slasher movie with a definite sense of humor. The biggest knock against Cherry Falls, it is so heavily slashed by the MPAA. Every single death scene is, you could tell, is hacked to shit. The ending sequence where there's like a big orgy happening, not that I want to see an orgy when I'm watching a film. I'm not, whatever you thought about me in the past, that's not exactly what I'm seeking from my films. But even with the way that sequence is done, the whole ending, you could tell the MPAA neutered Cherry Falls. I like the movie. I recommend the movie. I had a lot of fun with it. Brittany Murphy, Michael Biehn, everyone's a lot of fun in it. It was just a shame watching it, seeing how cut down it was. But that being said, I still had a ridiculously fun time watching it. If these kids find out he's only killing virgins, we're going to have a goddamn fuck fest on our hands. Like, I dug it. It's my kind of sense of humor with a movie. And Terror Tract was an anthology film that I never heard of. The best part of the movie's the wraparound with John Ritter. Like, the wraparound, it's so darkly comedic, and it has this insane ending with some insane imagery. But the three stories that make it up take themselves so seriously. I'm like, if they would have just played it playfully, like the wraparound segment when John Ritter does, it could have been real fun. But the three stories that make it up are really... The most memorable one is the one that stars Bryan Cranston, who besides John Ritter is the only notable actor in it. His thing involves a monkey, and it's mildly entertaining, but it's just like a worse version of the third segment of Cat's Eye, if you remember that one. So, Terror Tract was kind of a miss for me. Fun wraparound with John Ritter, but that's such a small percentage of the movie. The three stories themselves were eh. But, you know, for a cheap little double pack I picked up, it's not bad. And Cherry Falls was worth it alone, because I had a lot of fun with that. And this is for the Paul Walker collection, and this was the first ever film that Paul Walker did. He was 10 years old in this. So I was super excited to see 10-year-old Paul Walker getting his start in, of all places, a Troma film. And this is actually the very first Troma DVD I've ever bought, because Troma's not really my thing. But this one is called Monster in the Closet. It's Paul Walker. He's in here with Henry Gibson. John Carradine has a little role. Stella Stevens has a little cameo. Like, really bizarre casting for this. And just seeing 10-year-old Paul Walker as like this whiz kid in this was a treat. And I think the monster in this is played by Kevin Peter Hall, which that's cool, you know. Anytime he put on a suit, you know, it was something fun. It's totally a throwback to like 50s monster movies, and it's done so cheesily, and I was almost ready to blow this one kind of over. It was cool for Paul Walker, but man, the ending sequence of this is so ridiculously stupid that it was a blast. Like, I had a lot of fun with the whole ending. I won't give it away. Weird little Troma B-movie that was enhanced by the cast, namely Kid Paul Walker, for me, because I'm a huge Paul Walker fan, and the whole goofy ending. And it was an interesting watch, Monster in the Closet. And then this one, I have never seen any of the Ernest films before, so everyone's always saying Ernest Scared Stupid is a Halloween favorite for many people. Well, I found this for a couple bucks, real cheap, at one of my used stores, so I picked up a triple feature of Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Scared Stupid, and Ernest Goes to Jail. Ernest Goes to Camp was a very solid one. I had a lot of fun. It surprised me, actually, with how much I did end up liking Ernest Goes to Camp. Great soundtrack. It's really fun to see Lyle Alzado and John Vernon in there as some of your villains. Very harmless but fun summer camp movie. Ernest Scared Stupid, which was the primary reason I bought this. Again, it was fun. There's moments where it's a bit too kiddish. I think I'm doing myself a strong disservice watching these for the first time at age 25. If I was watching these as a kid, I probably would have loved them. Jim Varney, as the character of Ernest, Ernest has a lot of heart to him. He's a very genuine, pure character, which is, I think, part of the highlight with him. That's why people like Ernest so much. He's a lovable doofus, in other words. So Ernest Scared Stupid, but the Kyoto brothers, they reused a lot of the Killer Clown from Outer Space masks in this, and the main troll monster. It does get a little scary for kids. So I like that these Ernest movies, they're all family movies that all kind of straddle the line. But my favorite out of these three was definitely Ernest Goes to Jail. Ernest Goes to Jail was just wall-to-wall crazy humor, crazy jokes, a finale that is just the craziest stuff that I've ever seen in a comedy, and I had a ball with Ernest Goes to Jail. If I would have seen that as a kid, I would have been in stitches the whole time. It's so crazy and so batshit that I loved it. So, of these three, Ernest Goes to Jail is my favorite, but all three of them are very solid. probably get the Christmas one next. Ernest Saves Christmas, now that the holidays are coming up. This one was a recommendation to me of a slasher film that I had never heard of. Someone was asking me if I had ever seen or heard of this. I said, I never heard of that in my life. They were telling me, oh yeah, there's a young James McAvoy, young Isla Fisher in it. Which, if you're watching this for Isla Fisher, you're going to be very disappointed because her screen time is not very long in this. But it's a slasher film from 2001 that I never heard of called The Pool. And this is not a good movie at all. Like, the person who was talking to me is another, like, we love B movies, crazy movies, and they figured this would be right up my alley. I will say the movie has ambition. I like the setting, a slasher film that's in this abandoned water park. And I say water park very loosely because it's not like a big, there's like all these rooms that are submerged in a pool. There's like a cave with a water slide. So it's not like water park, but it was a decent, different enough setting to where that was enjoyable. So it has its ambitions in the right place, but the characters, I think there's too many characters, and most of them, when they get killed or by the end of the movie, you forget all about them, so it's like a lot of useless. Trim down the cast a little bit, because not all of them die either, so it's like, you could have whittled this down, and like some of the kills try to be ambitious, but the movie itself is bad, but it's a riffer. That's what I call these movies, that they're bad, but they're funny, to where you could easily just make fun of them and just riff on them and laugh at. Like, it's a goofy, bad movie with fun. I mean, some of the kill scenes, one in particular is actually not that bad. It doesn't really show too much, but what it does show, it's like, ooh, that's actually pretty cool. But there's a reason that I've never heard of this, and that I'm getting to the point now, whenever there's a movie I've never heard of, 8 times out of 10 I'd say there's probably a reason I've never heard of it. But if you like bad movies that you could riff on, that you could laugh at, this is definitely one of them. Especially from that era in 2001. The amount of alternative rock in that. This just sounded like a decent horror movie, and that's what it was. It was decent. There was nothing too overly special about it. Case 39. Evil kid movie. It does what it has to do. It's perfectly serviceable. It's fine. Not the most memorable thing in the world, but, it took a little bit for the events to get going. It was nice to see Bradley Cooper in there. I would say the best scene of the movie belongs to him. If you've seen the movie, you know what scene it is. It's fine. I think that's a good way to say this one. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's not really bad. It's just kind of, it's alright. Case 39. Now I just got to look for 1 to 38. Some van damage with Replicant. I was always aware of this one. It's another one of the million movies where Jean-Claude Van Damme plays dual roles. And this one was cool because you could tell this was like in the aftermath of Seven. There were a period of time where a lot of these cop thrillers were trying to have a gritty edge, like Resurrection was one. I mean, this one is not like a horror film like those, but you have serial killer Van Damme, who has some tremendous mommy issues, going around killing single moms, and they make a clone of the killer to work with Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker is like the lead in this, and he's great. He's a lot of fun. I always love seeing Michael Rooker and stuff, so having him with Van Damme in this was a lot of fun. That was a fun pairing of two guys. And you know what? This is actually a pretty fun movie. There's some good action. There's some really random kind of tangents it takes. Like, there's a hooker with a heart of gold at one point. It's like, what? But it's, it was fun. I actually had a lot of fun with this one. It's not as good as Double Impact, but it's a fun late 90s action thriller. For Van Damme, I like this one. Michael Rooker. And then I just watched this one tonight, because tonight is Halloween, and this was the movie I watched tonight just to see how it was. I had seen clips of this before, so now it was nice to finally watch the remake of House on Haunted Hill with Chris Kattan, of all people, and Bridget Wilson's in this, a bunch of people. For the most part, this movie really succeeds at doing what it set out to do. The setting is awesome. There's a lot of nightmarish visuals. The homage to Vincent Price, the original, you know, that stuff's all cool. There's some really weird, surreal imagery in this that kind of, like these non sequiturs that just appear throughout the movie. You know, they're good kind of nightmarish visuals, but they don't really have any, it's just kind of weird and nightmare-y and surreal just for the sake of being surreal. I don't know what the exact purpose was, and it gets a little convoluted by the end. Like, it turns into like a horror soap opera with all the deception that's going around, and the third act is pretty terrible with it. CG monster going around, and it ends on kind of a strange note. There's like a real cheap out towards the end. Like it gets weird, but for the most part, it was a very fun horror Halloween viewing. It feels like a horror video game movie at some points, and the setting of this old mansion that's like used to be a insane asylum. We've seen that done before, but for a late 90s horror film, you know what, this one, Chris Kattan was kind of an odd choice because his character felt like he was in the wrong movie. So I don't know what the whole gimmick was with that, but this one just sounded ridiculous, and as soon as I'm like, you know what, I love me some dumb action movies. This sounds right up my wheelhouse. Let's check it out. Mickey Rourke and Don Johnson and Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And this is a movie that I'm going to say, I liked it, but it's definitely front-loaded. In my opinion, all the best stuff in this is all during the first half hour. When it's like this cute, it's overly macho, and it's just they're getting into bar fights, and then it turns into this story where they have to rob this armored truck so they can save their bar, and they assemble this little team. That stuff was all great, and I was laughing, I was having a blast. And then after the first 35 minutes or so, it just kind of delves into typical action movie fodder, and it lost a lot of steam. I wish the whole movie would have been like a heist or a caper movie with these two and their team. And it's like all the other guys in their team all get killed off right after that, and then it's just these two, and it turns into a typical buddy drama type thing, and I'm just like, it's like it started so fun in the first half hour, and then it just kind of went into typical route. I mean, it's still a good movie. I still didn't mind watching it. Tom Sizemore was a pretty shitty villain, I'll say, but you know, it's alright. It's front-loaded. All the funnest stuff is in the front half hour, in my opinion. And then Jawbreaker, good old dark comedy in the vein of Heathers from like the early 2000s. Fun to see Pam Grier in there. Rose McGowan is our main kind of villainous girl of this clique. It's a dark comedy, and, you know, similar thing that I'll say with Case 39. It's fine. It's being a Heathers-style dark comedy in the early 2000s, kind of like Mean Girls type thing, and for that, it's alright. You know, it doesn't do anything groundbreakingly great or anything like that. It just has a dark comedy. I thought it could have gone even further at some points. I think they could have played it all up even more, but there's some fun social commentary and how the one wants to be the prom queen, and how when you get all this attention, what it does to, you know, blah blah blah. It's fun, just nothing overly memorable. Alright, we're just about done here, guys. I'm trying to go through these quicker. I don't want them to be too long. And if you've been following me on this channel through the last couple updates, you know I've slowly but surely been getting all the seasons of It's Always Sunny. Well, that comes to an end as of now here, because I got the last two seasons, 14 and 15, of It's Always Sunny in I still really liked the show. Like, it kept... Season 14 had some really fun episodes in it. You got the episode with Dolph Lundgren where they go see Thundergun 4. The episode where they're at the zoo on the phones. There's this weird, like, film noir, black and white and red episode on here called The Janitor Always Mops Twice. Yeah, season 14 was a fun season. And then season 15 is, I could see people being divided on this because this season gets really topical. The premiere episode of this is pretty much explaining how the gang was single-handedly responsible for all of the bad events of 2020. So the first couple episodes, although the roller rink one was fun because that one kind of goes back into their history, the main thing with this season is this contains the whole like 4 or 5 episode saga where they go to Ireland. And that's a very fun 4 episode thing. Like, I really like that story. Charlie particularly gets a really good arc with that when he meets his biological father, and it builds up to this really dramatic scene in the season finale that almost could have served as the series finale, if you ask me. I do know there is they're filming soon for season 16, I believe. How far beyond that are they going to go? I don't know, because, you know, Rob McElhenney's doing all this stuff with Ryan Reynolds now, and, you know, everyone's blossoming out, but if the show could just end on a positive note, because, I mean, they still got it. Like, I'm still enjoying these guys, so I love me some It's Always Sunny. I look forward to season 16, and to end out here, one of my childhood favorites, the complete series of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? The classic Hanna-Barbera series. I had a bunch of VHS tapes and oddball DVDs of this as a kid. It's good to have the entire series on one Blu-ray in one place. You've got... It says all 3 seasons, even though the 3rd season isn't a 3rd season of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? It's the 3rd season of The Adventures of Scooby-Doo, which for some reason was marketed as the 3rd season of this show. That's kind of a confusing thing, so I don't know why they did that with the 3rd season on this. But the Hanna-Barbera first 2 seasons of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? You know, what was the one? There's one episode I really liked. It has a plot very similar to House on Haunted Hill, A Night of Fright, or a House of Fright and the Night of Fright, and something like that, where they're in the house and it's the green ghosts with the chains. That's a really cool one. The one with the spaceman on that abandoned aircraft field is great, and it contains one of my favorite jokes where Scooby and Shaggy throw the key out the window. Yeah, it's a great joke. The snow ghost. Great stuff. It was fun reliving my childhood and watching Scooby. And it's nice to have it now on Blu-ray. And, you know, thin Blu-ray, just one release on 4 discs where I could have it all in one place. The best era of Scooby-Doo, in my opinion. You're never going to top the originals. It is formulaic, but it's the classics. You're never going to beat this form of Scooby-Doo. And gang, that about does it for my October 31st Halloween 2022 update. Thank you all very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Got a little bit of a busy November, December coming up. You guys know me, I'm always on the move, I'm always doing something, so hope you like my thrown together Halloween costume here as a construction worker, whatever the hell you want to call me. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the update, and we will see you all next time.